Good evening, class, and welcome to our presentation. My name is Amy Fitch, and this is also brought to you by Dana Richards and Renee Whitley. We hope you enjoy. The two eras that our group chose media references from was the Vietnam era and the Operation Enduring Freedom, Operation Iraqi Freedom era. The next two slides are quick reference slides available with information about those eras, but for time's sake, we will be skipping reviewing those.
In On Killing, a book by Dave Grossman examines the psychological complexities of killing in war and its broader societal implications. He argues that humans inherently resist killing their own kind, a phenomenon observed throughout history and supported by research. Grossman explores how militaries overcome the resistance through combining and desensitization techniques. He discusses the psychological aftermath of killing, including the prevalence of PTSD among soldiers. Grossman also scrutinizes the role of media, particularly video games and movies, in desensitizing society to violence. On Killing provides a deep analysis of the psychological, societal, and cultural dimensions of killing, prompting readers to consider its ethical implications and broader societal impacts.
What I Want You to Know is a powerful documentary told from the experiences of 13 veterans who served in Afghanistan and Iraq post 9/11. Initially committed to their mission with strong warrior ethos, their perspective shifted as they encountered the harsh realities of war, like civilian raids and the loss of fellow soldiers. Over time, the mission lost its clarity, and survival became all that mattered. Returning home, they carried physical and mental scars, feeling confused, angry, and betrayed by their leaders. This film sheds light on the true costs of war, urging reflection on the validity of the veterans' sacrifices and the accountability of those in charge. After analyzing our media from both eras and considering current state of knowledge, our group identified 3 themes to focus on for comparison: moral injury, PTSD, and reintegration. Moral injury is when one feels they have violated their conscience or moral compass when they take part in, witness, or fail to prevent an act that disobeys their own moral values or personal principles. Both media sources, On Killing and What I Want You to Know, depict the psychological impact of moral injury, with many shared aspects and these overlapping themes. Experiences contributing to moral injury among Vietnam veterans can include challenges in meeting societal expectations. For example, many Vietnam veterans were drafted into service while their family members may have been veterans of World War II. These veterans may have felt a strong sense of duty and honor instilled by societal narratives surrounding World War II. However, the controversial nature and negative public perception of the Vietnam War may have clashed with these expectations, leading to feelings of stigma and alienation. Societal pressures worsen moral injury, causing guilt, shame, and questioning of honor, duty, and integrity, affecting mental health. Some Vietnam vets distrust VA healthcare due to past negative experiences and mixed feelings about their service-related disabilities. In the film, Thank You for Your Service, some veterans felt unwelcome and believed their mission did more harm than good. One veteran recounted building a school in Kabul only for it to be destroyed by a suicide bomber, killing 30 children and several Marines on patrol. He questioned if building it led to the attack. We also see moral injury linked to civilian deaths. A soldier describes a mission to take out a high-profile extremist initially planned with an airstrike. They instead stormed the home. Inside were 24 women and children, leading him to note the frequent errors in such operations. They are reminded that civilians are collateral damage. Another veteran recounts his time in the Kandahar province. The veterans are instructed to build friendships and empathize with the locals. However, within this culture, there is common practice of child molestation among Afghan boys and Afghan elders. He states, "We are there to provide human rights to the people of Afghanistan, and that is just not happening." Within the two war eras, we also see how institutional betrayal caused moral injury. The Pentagon Papers, leaked in 1971, and the Afghanistan Papers, revealed by the Washington Post in 2019, exposed government failures. These disclosures significantly impacted public opinion, fueling skepticism, anti-war sentiment, and demands for greater transparency and accountability from the government. In the documentary, one veteran stated, There were no weapons of mass destruction. A lot of corporations got rich. Our friends were sacrificing and dying. I lost my sanity, my innocence, and my soul. For what? I was told it was an honorable mission. I was sent there on a fraud. I was betrayed by my country.
PTSD is defined by the American Psychiatric Association as an anxiety disorder which stems from a particular incident evoking significant stress. Re-experiencing of the trauma is common with thoughts or feelings, which can be emotional or psychologically numbing. Common symptoms include depression, loss of interest in work or activities, anger, anxiety, cynicism and distrust, memory loss, alienation, among other symptoms. The Research Triangle Institute's Vietnam's Readjustment Study concludes that 480,000 have full-blown PTSD and another 350,000 have partial PTSD in a study by Bentley. The dynamics were different in Vietnam as conditions of the war were such that moral revulsion combined with psychological conflict led to both acute and delayed reactions. In the documentary, we see failure by military leadership. The film discusses how veterans felt unprepared for the complexities of war, including the challenges of insurgency and counterinsurgency operations. For example, one veteran states, "We have to give out Coca-Cola and candy and be nice. We are coached to kill and destroy the enemy. We're not taught these cultural things. You're trying to do your job as a Marine to destroy enemies, but also working as an armed social worker, asking the people, what type of infrastructure do you need?" In On Killing, there was multiple society failures in the sense that soldiers were deployed individually for one-year tours in Vietnam. When sent home, they traveled individually and did not have a period to exchange stories with comrades and prepare for civilian life. No peers to commiserate with, making veterans feel a hostile environment yet again. There was a lack of society support, which contributed to PTSD. Grossman emphasizes that there is a natural resistance among humans to kill their own. This resistance is so strong that historically many soldiers in combat either did not fire their weapons or fired them intentionally to miss. The line between combatants and non-combatants were blurred, with soldiers sometimes shooting women and children. During the OEF-OIF era, service members exhibited PTSD related to hypervigilance, as they constantly were searching for IEDs while driving. These devices could be hidden among trash or disguised as dead animals. Encountering up to 24 IEDs weekly exposed them to blast waves from detonations alongside witnessing frequent deaths, compounding their psychological burden. One veteran recalls, "Picking up the pieces of soldiers you loved, that was life in Iraq."
Present-day knowledge, we have increased awareness and recognition. Greater acknowledgement of PTSD, moral injury, and other mental health issues amongst veterans has reduced stigma and improved access to care. Recognition of the profound impact of traumatic brain injuries is continually growing. Advances in treatment, evidence-based treatments like psychotherapy and medications, along with alternative therapies such as mindfulness and virtual reality, are continually evolving to better serve veterans and their families. Understanding risks and protective factors, deeper insight into combat exposures, social supports, personality traits, and coping strategies contribute to understanding both risk and protective factors for mental health issues among service veterans. Focus on prevention and early intervention. Efforts have increasingly directed towards prevention and early intervention, utilizing screening programs, peer support networks, and resilience training to address mental health concerns before they escalate. Our third theme, reintegration, encompasses the transition to civilian life after military service or deployment. It involves adjusting to civilian society, reconnecting with family and friends, finding employment or education, and addressing mental health needs. Many veterans find this transition challenging, and support services are crucial. Our sources highlight difficulties in adjustment, moral injury, mental health challenges, strained relationship, emotional regulation, social disconnection, trauma, loss of identity, societal accountability, and government betrayal. The book explores emotional regulation, social disconnection, trauma, loss of identity, and purpose, while the documentary focuses on societal accountability, government betrayal, and questioning missions agenda. However, neither source directly mentions reintegration support for service members.
In On Killing by Dave Grossman, the author explores the military, civilian, and individual cultural values through the lens of the psychological effects of war. Grossman delves into how these values influence soldiers' behavior on the battlefield as their responses to the trauma of combat. He discusses how military training instills values such as duty, honor, loyalty, which can shape soldiers' attitudes towards killing. Grossman also examines how civilian perceptions of war and violence impact both soldiers and society at large, influencing attitudes towards the military and the moral implications of warfare. At the individual level, cultural values intersect with personal beliefs and experiences, affecting how soldiers cope with the psychological challenges of combat and the aftermath of violence. Through these explorations, Grossman provides insights into the complex interplay between culture values and the psychological effects of war.
In the film, we see a clash between cultures. For example, we see the cultural differences between Afghan soldiers and the U.S. military during the transition of power. One veteran stated, Afghan soldiers weren't ready to learn. They had no formal education, and there were many technical matters. He recalled how they liked to get high and point guns for fun, and that they had no pride in their uniform, a stark difference from the professionalism expected from the U.S. military. We also see a lack of respect that developed between the people and the U.S. military. One soldier recalls, we went in with these very positive views that we were there for a good reason. Then a child picked up a grenade and threw it at us. That created a backlash. How do we help these people if we can't even respect them? There was very little respect for the people in Iraq within the military that I served with. We also see distrust and paranoia as Marines discuss the enemy blending in with civilians. And we see survivor guilt for those soldiers lost, but also for the Iraq and Afghanistan interpreters left behind. Finally, we see institutional betrayal. One soldier discussed how the media placed a positive spin on the war to cover up a false sense of success.
During our discussion with two veterans, one from Vietnam and the other from the OEF-OIF conflict, we encountered profound insight into the psychological effects of war and media portrayal. The Vietnam veteran, with 2 deployments, shared his deep-seated reluctance to discuss his experience, even with his family. His son revealed that he had never heard his father speak about his time in Vietnam, highlighting the internal turmoil many veterans face. He was not familiar with either of our media sources and replied that he regularly made efforts to avoid any media related to the subject. I then shared with an OEF-OIF veteran with 3 deployments, who then returned to the area as a contractor. He was familiar with the book On Killing. He said he agreed with most of the book, but not that there is a resistance for humans to kill. Wars have surfaced all throughout humanity, and humans have always killed each other during these times, and the killing of humans also served as the premise for many wars, he said. The veteran had not seen the documentary, but he shared many of the sentiments of the documentary. He reported trusting the Marine Corps, but not his government. The veteran stated, one of the hardest parts was leaving the good ones, referring to the locals, behind to die when we left. We knew it, and they knew it. You could see it when we left Afghanistan, and they were clinging to the landing gear of the C-130s. Both veterans made reference to their brothers they served with. The key takeaway is the enduring and extensive psychological impacts of war across history. It's imperative to acknowledge and not discount these effects in any context. While the media attempts to portray these impacts, it is crucial not to allow media narratives to define or overshadow the veterans' lived experiences. Media outlets often have their own agenda, ranging from political to financial, which can distort the narrative. Therefore, it is our responsibility as civilians to approach media sources with critical thinking, recognizing the inherited biases and limitations, and to prioritize the voice and experience of the veteran above all else. As an additional media source, the Afghanistan Papers reveals how the government and the military manipulated information to maintain public support for the war in Afghanistan, despite internal doubts. This underscores the media's power in shaping perceptions and highlights how information manipulation serves as a tool for propaganda and control.
We recommend watching this Vietnam-centered documentary as it shares many similarities to the documentary What I Want You to Know. Sir No Sir depicts Vietnam soldiers protesting the war, facing consequences like arrest and dishonorable discharge. Themes of moral injury and government betrayal emerge, with African American soldiers refusing to fight, drawing parallels to their own oppression with those of the Vietnamese people. Despite feeling their sacrifice was in vain, elements of post-traumatic growth emerge as veterans engage in the anti-war